It was like one of those things they keep in a jar in the tent of a sideshow on the outskirts of a drowsy little town. One of those pale things drifting in alcohol plasma, forever dreaming and circling, with its peeled dead eyes staring out at you and never seeing you. It went with the noiselessness of the night, and only the crickets chirping and the frogs sobbing off in the moist swampland. One of those things in a big jar that makes your stomach jump as it does when you see a preserved arm in a laboratory vat. Charlie stared back at it for a long time, his big, raw hands hairy on the roofs of them, clenching the rope that kept back curious people. He had paid his dime, and now he stared. It was getting late. The merry-go-round drowsed down to a lazy, mechanical tinkle. Tent peggers in the back of a canvas smoked and cursed over a poker game. Lights switched out, putting a summer gloom over the carnival. People streamed homeward in cliques and queues. Somewhere, a radio flared up, then cut, leaving the Louisiana sky wide and silent with stars. There was nothing in the world for Charlie but that pale thing sealed in its universe of serum. Charlie's loose mouth hung open in a pink wheel, teeth showing. His eyes were puzzled, admiring, wondering. Someone walked in the shadows behind him, small beside Charlie's gaunt tallness. "Oh," said the shadow, coming into the light bulb glare. "You still here, bud?" "Yeah," said Charlie, like a man in his sleep. The carny boss appreciated Charlie's curiosity. He nodded at his old acquaintance in the jar. "Everybody likes it, in a peculiar kind of way." Charlie rubbed his long jawbone. "You ever consider selling it?" The carny boss's eyes dilated, then closed. He snorted. "Nah, it brings in customers. They like seeing stuff like that." Charlie made a disappointed, "Oh." "Well," the carny boss considered. "If a guy had money, maybe." "How much money?" "If a guy had," the carny boss estimated, counting fingers, watching Charlie as he tacked it out one finger after another. "If a guy had 3, 4, say, maybe 7 or 8. Charlie nodded with each motion, expectantly. Seeing this, the carny boss raised his total. "Maybe $10, or maybe 15. Charlie scowled, worried. The carny boss retreated. "Say a guy has $12. Charlie grinned. "Why, he could buy that thing in that jar," the carny boss concluded. "Funny thing," said Charlie. "I got just $12 in my denims, and I've been reckoning how looked up to I'd be back down at Wilder's Hollow if I brung home something like this to set on my shelf over the table. Folks would sure look up to me then." The sale was completed, with the jar put on the back seat of Charlie's wagon. The horse skittered his hoofs when he saw the jar and whinnied. The carny boss glanced up with an expression of almost relief. "I was tired of seeing that damn thing around anyway. Don't thank me. Lately I've been thinking things about it. Funny things. But hell, I'm a big-mouthed so-and-so. So long, farmer." Charlie drove off. The naked blue light bulbs withdrew like dying stars. The open, dark country night of Louisiana swept in around the wagon and the horse. There was just Charlie, the horse, and the crickets, and the jar behind the high seat. It sloshed back and forth, sloshed wet, and the cold gray thing drowsily slumped against the glass looking out, but seeing nothing, nothing. Charlie leaned back to pet the lid. Smelling of strange liquor, his hand returned, changed and cold and trembling. Excited. Yes, sir, he thought to himself. Yes, sir. Slosh, slosh, slosh. In the hollow, numerous grass-green and blood-red lanterns tossed dusty light over men huddled, murmuring, spitting, sitting on general store property. They knew the creak bumble of Charlie's wagon and did not shift their raw, drab-haired skulls as he rocked to a halt. Their cigars were glowworms. Their voices were frog mutterings on summer nights. Charlie leaned down eagerly. Hi, Clem. Hi, Mutt. Hello, Charlie. Hello, Charlie. They murmured. The political conflict continued. Charlie cut it down the seam. I got something here. I got something you might want to see. Tom Carmody's eyes glinted, green in the lamplight from the general store porch. It seemed to Charlie like Tom Carmody was forever installed under porches in shadow, or under trees in shadow, or if in a room, then in the farthest niche, shining his eyes out at you from the dark. You never knew what his face was doing, and his eyes were always funning you, and every time they looked at you, they laughed a different way. You ain't got nothing we want to see, baby doll. Charlie made a fist and looked at it. Something in a jar, he went on. Looks kinda like a brain, like a pickled jellyfish. Kinda like a... well, come see yourself. Someone snicked a cigar into a fall of pink ash and ambled over to look. Charlie grandly elevated the jar lid, and in the uncertain lantern light, the man's face changed. Hey now, what in the hell is this? It was the first thaw of the evening. Others shifted lazily upright, leaned forward, and gravity pulled them into walking. They made no effort, except to put one shoe before the other, to keep from collapsing upon their unusual faces. They circled the jar and its contents, and Charlie, for the first time in his life, seized on some hidden strategy and crashed the glass lid shut. You want to see more? Drop around my house. It'll be there, he declared, generously. Tom Carmody spat out from his porch eyrie. Huh! Let me see that again, cried Graham Smednow. Is it an octopus? Charlie flapped the reins. The horse stumbled into action. Come on around. You'll be welcome. What'll your wife say? She'll kick the tar off on our heels. But Charlie and the wagon were gone over the hill. The men stood, all of them, chewing their tongues, squinting up the road in the dark. Tom Carmody swore softly from the porch. Charlie climbed the steps of his shack and carried the jar to its throne in the living room, thinking that from now on, this lean-to would be a palace with an emperor. That was the word, emperor, all cold and white and quiet, drifting in his private pool, raised, elevated upon a shelf over a ramshackle table. The jar, as he watched, burned off the cold mist that hung over this place on the rim of the swamp. What you got there? Betty's thin soprano turned him from his awe. She stood in the bedroom door, glaring out, her thin body clothed in faded blue gingham, her hair drawn to a drab knot behind red ears. Her eyes were faded like the gingham. "Well?" she repeated. "What is it? What's it look like to you, Thetty?" She took a thin step forward, making a slow, indolent pendulum of hips, her eyes intent upon the jar, her lips drawn back to show feline milk teeth. The dead pale thing hung in its serum. Betty snapped a dull blue glance at Charlie, then back to the jar, once more at Charlie, once more to the jar. Then she whirled quickly. It looks just like you, Charlie," she cried. The bedroom door slammed. The reverberation did not disturb the contents of the jar, but Charlie stood there, longing after his wife, heart pounding frantically. Much later, when his heart slowed, he talked to the thing in the jar. "I work the bottom land to the butt bone every year, and she grabs the money and runs off down home, visiting her folks 9 weeks at a stretch. I can't keep hold of her. Her and the men from the store, they make fun of me. I can't help it if I don't know a way to hold on to her. Damn, but I try." Philosophically, the contents of the jar gave no advice. "Charlie?" Someone stood in the front yard door. Charlie turned, startled, then broke out a grin. It was some of the men from the general store. Charlie, we thought we came up to have a look at that stuff you got in that jar." July passed warm, and it was August. For the first time in years, Charlie was as happy as tall corn growing after a drought. It was gratifying to hear boots walking through the tall grass, the sound of men spitting into the ditch prior to setting foot on the porch, the sound of heavy bodies creaking the boards, and the groan of the house as yet another shoulder leaned against it, and as a hairy wrist wiped a mouth clean, another voice said, "Can I come in?" With elaborate casualness, Charlie'd invite the arrivals in. There'd be chairs, soapboxes for all, or at least carpets to squat on. And by the time crickets were itching their legs into a summertime humming, and frogs were throat-swollen like ladies with goiters shouting in the great night, the room would be full to bursting with people from all the bottom lands. At first, nobody would say anything. The first half hour of such an evening, while people came in and got settled, was spent in carefully rolling cigarettes, putting tobacco neatly into the rut of brown paper, loading it, tamping it, as they loaded and tamped and rolled their thoughts and fears and amazement for the evening. It gave them time to think. You could see their brains working behind their eyes as they fingered the cigarettes into smoking order. It was kind of a rude church gathering. They sat, squatted, leaned on plaster walls, and one by one, with reverent awe, they stared at the jar upon its shelf. They wouldn't stare sudden-like. No, they kind of did it slow, casual, as if they were glancing around the room, letting their eyes fumble over just any old object that happened into their consciousness. And, just by accident, of course, the focus of their wandering eyes would occur always at the same place. After a while, all eyes in the room would be fastened to it, like pins stuck in some incredible pincushion. And the only sound would be someone sucking a corn cob, or the children's barefooted scurry on the porch planks outside. Maybe some woman's voice would come. "You kids get away, now! Get!" And with a giggle like soft, quick water, the bare feet would rush off to scare the bullfrogs. Charlie would be up front, naturally, on his rocking chair, a plate pillow under his lean rump, rocking slow, enjoying the fame and looked-up-to-ness that came with keeping the jar. Teddy would be seen way back of the room with the women folk in a bunch, all grey and quiet, abiding their men. Teddy looked like she was ripe for jealous screaming, but she said nothing, just watched men tromp into her living room and sit at the feet of Charlie, staring at this holy grail-like thing, and her lips were set cold and hard, and she spoke not a civil word to anybody. After a period of proper silence, someone, maybe old Gramps Medno from Crick Road, would clear the phlegm from a deep cave somewhere inside him, lean forward, blinking, wet his lips maybe, and there'd be a curious tremble in his calloused fingers. This would cue everyone to get ready for the talking to come. Ears were primed, people settled like sows in the warm mud after a rain. Gramps looked a long while, measured his lips with a lizard tongue, then settled back and said, like always, in a high, thin old man's tenor, "Wonder what it is? Wonder if it's a he or a she, or just a plain old it? Sometimes I wake up at night, twist on my corn matting, think about that jar, sitting here in the long dark, think about it hanging in liquid, peaceful and pale, like an animal oyster. Sometimes I wake Ma, and we both think on it." While talking, Gramps moved his fingers in a quavering pantomime. Everybody watched his thick thumb weave and the other heavy-nailed fingers undulate. We both lay there, thinking, and we shiver. Maybe a hot night, trees sweating, mosquitoes too hot to fly, but we shiver just the same and turn over, trying to sleep. Gramps lapsed back into silence, as if his speech was enough from him to let some other voice talk the wonder, the awe, and the strangeness.